Coming up today, with the number of irregular workers at record highs and young people struggling to find work, Korea's rival parties lay out their plans to radically overhaul the nation's rigid labour market. The US Federal Reserve keeps rates unchanged at near zero as it awaits further improvement in the labour market. The timing of the hike remains unclear, but analysts still believe it'll happen in September. First, the Wall Street Journal says North Korea has no interest in an Iran-style nuclear deal because Kim Jong-un is concerned he would meet the same fate as slain Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Thursday, July 30th here in Seoul. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. I'm Mark Broome. We start with plans to shake up Korea's rigid labour market in order to give the economy some much-needed flexibility. The nation's rival parties have been setting out their plans to overhaul the entire system, but they are already at odds over how to go about it. Kim Jong-un starts us off.
The ruling Saenuri Party says is seeking to address the issue of labor market polarization to try to close existing gaps.
We hope to address the polarization in the labor market, the divide between workers at big companies and those at smaller firms, and between regular and irregular workers. We hope to boost the economy by strengthening the working class.
With the looming uncertainties in the global and domestic economy, Korean companies are increasingly reluctant to recruit regular workers, relying instead on irregular or temporary workers. Government data shows the number of irregular workers hit 6 million in March, or 32% of the country's entire workforce. The problem is that most of these positions are occupied by young people who are already struggling with a high unemployment rate. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy urged the government to focus more of its attention on this problem.
The youth unemployment rate is 10.2%, the highest since the Asian financial crisis in 1997. We must see this as a national emergency and devise special measures to address it. The government plans to create 200,000 new jobs, and they should all be full-time jobs.
The opposition also urged the government to pour more of its job creation resources into small and medium-sized firms, which account for more than 90% of all companies in Korea. The party said the government should support policies designed to strengthen SMEs and help them prosper, as well as policies to resolve labor market inequalities. To achieve the goal of restructuring the labor market, the ruling bloc is demanding the revival of a tripartite committee composed of the government, labor, and management. The opposition says that what's needed is a new, more inclusive body with the participation of the country's two main umbrella labor unions, the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions and the Federation of Trade Unions. The two parties plan to iron out their labor market reform plans during their next regular session that starts in September. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
No change in interest rates in the United States after the Federal Reserve maintained its 0 to 0.25% range. The Fed also gave no hints at when a rate hike is coming. In a relatively poker-faced statement, the US Central Bank's Open Market Committee again said that it will raise rates when it sees further improvement in the labour market and when it's confident inflation is moving towards 2%. The committee's decision to keep rates static was unanimous. It adds that the current economic conditions will likely warrant rates staying near zero for the time being. In terms of its view on the US economy, the Fed sees it growing moderately with solid job gains and falling unemployment. Analysts still generally believe the Fed will start to gradually raise rates in September. The Fed has held rates near zero since late 2008 as part of its effort to spur the recovery from the global financial crisis. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, hosts a series of regional conferences every summer. This includes the 27-member ASEAN Regional Forum, which is one of the very few multinational platforms North Korea participates in. From the regime's nuclear arms program to historical differences in Northeast Asia, our Chae-sun takes us through some of the key issues that will top this year's agenda.
While North Korea is expected to attend this year's gathering of foreign ministers at the ASEAN Regional Forum, observers in South Korea are zooming in on whether the South's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se will meet one-on-one with his North Korean counterpart Lee Soo-yong. Seoul keeps a door open to inter-Korean dialogue, but the two diplomats may not have a meaningful encounter amid frosty relations. Pyongyang, meanwhile, will likely seek to mend ties with its traditional ally China, gone sour under the leadership of Kim Jong-un. In the wake of the international nuclear deal with Iran, countries participating in multinational efforts to denuclearize the North are hoping for a similar resolution. On the sidelines of next week's conference, Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo are expected to reaffirm their shared goal of bringing Pyongyang back to the stalled six-party talks while pressuring Beijing to persuade its ally. South Korea's top nuclear envoy, Hwang Jun-guk, has said the North is at a crossroads between completion of its nuclear arms development and denuclearization through dialogue. This, however, may be a long shot since the North, calling itself a nuclear state, said it was not interested in any renegotiation whatsoever over its nuclear weapons program. The South Korean foreign minister is also expected to meet his Japanese counterpart to urge Tokyo to responsibly resolve issues concerning Japan's atrocities during its colonization of the Korean peninsula. It, however, remains to be seen whether Seoul's diplomatic efforts will result in Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe upholding Tokyo's past apologies for its wartime aggressions in his expected statement to mark the 70th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. 최유선, Arirang News.
Now, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has no interest in Iran-style nuclear talks because he has no intention of sharing the same fate of Libya's ousted dictator Muammar Gaddafi. This is according to the Wall Street Journal, which published an article this week on Kim's constant rejection of international efforts to engage in talks. The newspaper says that, unlike his father Kim Jong-il, who used the North's nuclear capabilities to extract aid from the US and other countries, the current leader is attempting to develop a nuclear threat alongside economic growth. The Daily says Western countries have little leverage over North Korea in terms of sanctions, as the state is largely cut off from international trade and normal diplomatic interaction anyway. Gaddafi was killed by a rebel militia in 2011, some 8 years after agreeing to give up the country's weapons of mass destruction. The Organisation for Cooperation Between Railways has thrown its support behind South Korea being able to join the international body despite strong opposition from North Korea. Speaking at a press conference in Poland on Wednesday, the chairman of the 28-member organisation, Tadeusz Sosuda, said that they plan to change the membership procedure from a unanimous vote to 2/3 approval from its members to help South Korea win membership. The move comes after South Korea again failed to join the organisation, which is a prerequisite for building a trans-Asian railway due to opposition from North Korea, which is already a member. Earlier this year, a group of American historians released a statement urging Japan to acknowledge its historical wrongdoings, which prompted hundreds more historians to follow suit. Our Hwang Sang-yi sat down with Professor Mark Sheldon of Cornell University to learn about why he signed the agreement, this statement rather, and for his views on Korea-Japan ties.
What were your reasons behind signing the statement?
The United States is not a direct party to the Japan-Korea-China comfort women relationship at that time. But we have our own issues related to it in terms of the Korean War, in terms of the U.S. occupations of both Japan and Korea. So these are issues that particularly concern us in the context of the fact that Japan and Korea and China are in the middle of a dispute about how to remember the history of that period and the comfort women and the larger issue of forced labor.
How effective do you think this type of collective response from world historians could be in getting Japan to fully acknowledge its historical wrongdoings?
So this is a process that is going on, and our letter is a small part of that, but it happens to come at a moment when a lot of things are happening. Both Japan and Korea have made applications to UNESCO for World Heritage Sites, an issue in which the comfort women and I would say forced labor became part of that process. There are many things at play, and in which the Japanese government finds itself in a position of having to change.
Speaking of the UNESCO listing, what do you make of Japan's unofficial translation, leaving out forced labor?
Word games are going on. The Japanese refused to use the signature language of forced labor. The Japanese government scored a victory domestically. The Korean government scored an important victory internationally in getting on the table Japanese recognition of the comfort women system and other elements of forced labor. This is not a complete victory, but it's an important milestone, and we hope that it can be extended in future.
Many believe that the so-called Abe statement that will be released sometime in August could be a turning point for Korea-Japan relations. What's your expectation, and what do you think should be within this statement?
We can see that it's very easy and comfortable for Abe to apologize to the Americans, as he did brilliantly in Washington, D.C. There are many positive relations in the U.S.-Japan relationship at the moment. I don't see any reason to expect that his statements next month will go beyond these in terms of Japan-Korea or Japan-China relations. There may be references to forced labor and comfort women using language very carefully nuanced to be comfortable for the regime and its neo-nationalist support. That's his political base. So I'm not expecting any major change around the issues of this kind.
Thank you, Professor Selden, for your time today.
Thanks so much. Pleasure to talk to your audience.
Now, the Korean flag isn't a standard part of a soldier's uniform in all branches of the military, but that is about to change. The Defense Ministry wants the flag displayed on all uniforms by October, in time for an important day in Korea's history. Connie Kim reports.
The goal is to boost the soldiers' pride in their country and their mission to defend it. The project got started with a ceremony in Nonsan, south of Seoul, on Wednesday, as parents and grandparents attached Korean flag patches onto the uniforms of their sons and grandsons, who just completed 5 weeks of military training before beginning their mandatory military service.
We believe today's ceremony to celebrate the addition of the national flag to soldiers' uniforms will help instill a sense of pride and patriotism in the troops, the nation's defenders.
Marking the 70th anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japanese colonial rule, Korea aims to have its national flags attached on all soldiers' military uniforms by October. Up until today, only the Korean augmentation to the United States Army, or becuase, the Marines and soldiers dispatched overseas, had the flag displayed on their uniforms. For Private Lee Jun-hyung, a U.S. citizen who chose to enlist in the Korean Army, having the Korean flag on his uniform is a reminder of his roots.
Although I was born in a different country, the Korean flag reminds me that I'm still part of this one.
For many of the soldiers who are part of today's events, the thought of being separated from family during their service brought up some strong emotions. For their families, seeing the flags on the young soldiers' uniforms served as a powerful reminder of all that's at stake for the men and the country they're about to defend. Connie Kim, Arirang News, Nonsan.
The beauty and biological diversity of Korea's DMZ is second to none around the world. Basically untouched by humans for more than 6 decades, the place is teeming with endangered plant and animal species. And South Korea is pushing for the DMZ, a remnant of war, to become a symbol for a peaceful future. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
This is the military demarcation line separating the two Koreas. It stretches across some 250 kilometers of the border and is at most points 4 kilometers wide. It's also the most heavily fortified border in the world. The DMZ, as is more commonly known, contains 907 square kilometers of land and accounts for almost 0.5% of the Korean peninsula. For 62 years now, the land has been untouched by man and is a sealed-off site of pristine nature, a safe home to scores of endangered species and wildlife. As a result, the DMZ has developed its own historic, environmental, and economic identity over the last 6 decades.
There are numerous types of species here from both Koreas because this is the place where the ecologies of the two meet. The Ministry of Environment lists 171 endangered species and the DMZ contains 75 of them.
In recent years, the South Korean government has been pushing to list the DMZ as an internationally recognized area of outstanding natural beauty. President Park Geun-hye has also expressed a strong interest in establishing an inter-Korean World Eco-Peace Park at the DMZ.
The goal of the Eco-Peace Park is to enhance the trust between the two Koreas and open up a section of the DMZ. But the most important part of that will be how well we preserve it. We need legislation to provide the funding to protect the area.
Despite the ongoing tensions between the two Koreas, the South Korean government is hoping to persuade North Korea to make the park a reality sooner rather than later. The DMZ, a long-term symbol of separation, could become a beacon of peace and harmony if a special park is established here. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News, Paju.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a wonderful day and thank you for watching. We do hope to see you at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.